Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. My online girlfriend was the epitome of perfection, both alluring and noble. Her voice was incredibly seductive, and she had a slender waist and long legs. She'd call me hubby all day long, her sweet words melting my heart. After the Lunar New Year at a family gathering, I accidentally discovered that the rumored Ice Queen CEO, Jade, whom the entire city feared, was none other than my online girlfriend. Hearing that familiar voice, I froze on the spot, wanting to scream for help and run far away. Actually, I hadn't planned to attend this gathering initially, but my buddy Keith begged me to come. Oh, and he promised that the party would be full of beautiful women, so I reluctantly went along with him. He wasn't wrong. The party was indeed filled with beauties. However, none of them could compare to my online girlfriend sitting on a sofa in the corner. Keith and I were chatting when a commotion from the hall made us turn our heads. We looked closely and realized it was Jade Lu, the famous Ice Queen CEO of Harbor City. Jade was both alluring and seductive, the dream woman of wealthy young men. Yet she always wore an ice-cold expression as if everyone owed her millions. Despite countless pursuers, no romantic scandal had ever surfaced about her. Once, a popular starlet tried to approach her by spiking her drink. He almost succeeded but was eventually exposed, and his fate was miserable. Since then, people's attention shifted from her stunning beauty to the question, did Jade L even like men? I glanced at my phone screen. My baby girl had sent me a voice message last night calling me hubby, so sweetly. She said she had a client meeting tonight and was probably having dinner with them right now. Thinking of this, I texted, "Miss you, then call me hubby." But at that moment, a familiar voice echoed from afar. "Hubby, I miss you too." I immediately turned around, unable to believe my eyes. Jade Lu was holding a phone. Her face was expressionless, but everyone around was terrified. Right then, my phone screen lit up with a 3-second voice message from my baby girl. I tried to comfort myself, thinking it was just a coincidence, but when I opened the recording, that sentence, "Hubby, I miss you too," made me freeze. I desperately sent another message. "Really, how much do you miss me?" And watched Jade's reaction. Sure enough, her phone vibrated a moment later and I received a reply. "I miss you so much. I want to appear by your side right now." I completely collapsed, unable to believe that my baby girl was actually that terrifying Ice Queen CEO. Recalling all the time she acted spoiled and called me hubby, and all the unreasonable requests I had made, my body turned cold. I softly asked Keith, "Do you know anything about Jade L?" He looked at me with disbelief. "Of course I know her, but do you dare to mess with her? Have you forgotten about that starlet?" His words were like a bucket of cold water poured over my head. How could I forget that the starlet failed to seduce her and ended up being blacklisted and exiled overseas? But it seemed like deceiving Jade Lu was even more serious than seducing her. Initially, I had created a persona of a 30-year-old boyfriend, the CEO of a listed company. So every day, I made her call me hubby. I also often acted spoiled with her. At first she was shy, but with my training she gradually became bolder. Now she was telling me that the shy, seductive college student was actually the beautiful CEO of Harbor City Port, Jade Lu. I looked back at that cold face. There was nothing shy about it. Most importantly, I was younger than her. I swallowed hard, tightly gripped my buddy Keith's hand and promised Keith, "If someone deceives Jade Lu, what do you think would happen?" He looked at me with a mischievous smile. "Guess I don't want to guess. It wouldn't be anything good anyway." But when I turned my head again, Jade Lu's figure had disappeared. Suddenly, I felt inexplicably uneasy. I quickly asked my buddy, "Where did Jade Lu go?" He winked and said, "Saw her run out with her phone, probably calling her boyfriend." The next second, my phone rang. I hurriedly hung up, feeling anxious. My buddy looked at me suspiciously. "Why didn't you answer?" I casually lied. "Wrong number." But immediately after, the phone rang again. I still hung up, terrified. I said to Keith, "I have to go first," and ran away like my life depended on it. Staying there was like waiting for death. Back home, I opened my phone with a heavy heart. Besides a string of missed calls, there were countless messages. "Hubby, what are you doing? Hubby, why aren't you replying? Hubby, why aren't you answering the phone? Hubby, are you mad at me? I didn't mean to reject you just now." Next time, I'll do whatever you want. Looking at the series of Hubby, my head felt like it was about to explode. What did a college student like me have to do with the image of a CEO almost 30 years old? I could have built any image, but why did I choose something completely unlike my real self? I sighed, opening the camera and looking at my face on the screen. Okay, still nothing like a 30-year-old CEO. If Jade Lu found out she was being deceived by a younger guy, I would probably die a miserable death. No, I couldn't follow in the footsteps of those starlets. Just as I was hesitating, not knowing how to reply, my mom's call came. Leo, come home for dinner tonight. Grandpa has an important guest and wants you to be there. I weakly replied, okay. Hung up and looked at the screen full of messages, my mood a mess. I went downstairs looking absent-minded, pretending to be home late. Why would Jade Lu be at my house? Then it hit me. The important guest of my grandpa was Jade Lu's grandpa. When Grandpa Lu saw me, he smiled and said, Leo, do you still remember Grandpa Paolo? I used to hold you when you were little. I heard a familiar opening line, feeling black lines all over my face, but still had to smile politely. Of course I remember. Enjoy yourself, Grandpa. I glanced at Jade Lu. She was sitting on the sofa, silent, intently looking at her phone. Perhaps noticing my gaze, Grandpa Lu, you said little Jade chatted with Leo for a while. I quickly waved my hand, no need. Grandpa, I'll go see what Mom is doing. Saying that, I turned to run but accidentally dropped my phone on the ground right in front of Jade Lu. I hurriedly bent down to pick it up but was still a step slower. She picked up the phone. The screen lit up. Crap. The lock screen was a picture of her collarbone. How could I let her see that? I quickly snatched back the phone, vigilantly looking at her. I'm going to find Mom. Saying that, I hurried away. Wait! She suddenly called out to me. Can I see your phone? Instinctively, I covered my pocket with my hand. Not really convenient at this moment. Both grandpas noticed the commotion. Grandpa L narrowed his eyes. What's wrong? I loudly said. A phone is a personal item. I don't think it's very convenient. Sure enough, Grandpa Lu's face changed. Little Jade, why do you want to see someone's phone? I wasn't sure if I was mistaken, but I thought I saw her slightly smirk. She said, it's just that I feel Leo's wallpaper looks a bit familiar. Seems to be my picture. After all, it involves portrait rights. I think I should be careful. That's right, you must be careful. Grandpa Lu immediately frowned. Leo, quickly give her your phone to see. In that instant, I seemed to see the spoiled online girlfriend again. I still covered my pocket, not really convenient. I tried to wink at Grandpa, but he didn't seem to understand, still sternly looking at me. Leo, as a man, don't be so hesitant. Quickly give her your phone to see. Receiving Grandpa L's support, Jade Lu smiled, slowly approached, and forced me to sit on the sofa. In that moment, I seemed to clearly hear my heart thumping. I couldn't deny it. Jade Lu was indeed a top-tier beauty. Although I had met countless beautiful women, I still couldn't help but swallow hard. Right after, I felt a strange movement in my pocket. Something was taken away. I immediately realized it was my phone. Jade Lu was indeed unreasonable. She calmly opened my phone to look at it, a meaningful smile playing on her lips. Do you know this person? I was startled, quickly shaking my head. No, I don't. This is a senior classmate who sent it to me to see a starlet he admires. She nodded. Is that so? Turns out it's your senior classmate. At this time, Grandpa also chimed in. Little Jade, is that your picture? Jade Lu smiled faintly. It's not me, just a friend of mine, Grandpa. Don't worry. Grandpa nodded reassuringly and continued playing chess with Grandpa Lu. Jade Lu took out her own phone and held it out to me. Add me. I wanted to refuse, but her eyes glanced towards Grandpa, and I understood immediately. If I didn't add her, she could completely ask Grandpa for my number, and then Grandpa would know my phone wallpaper was her picture. In an instant, I couldn't help but succumb to her tricks. Luckily, I still had a backup account. Without hesitation, I used that account to add her on WeChat. After adding her, she finally let me go. I immediately slipped into the kitchen, texting. I needed to ask my friend some things tonight. My feelings were very complicated at this moment, recalling the time before Jade Lu on WeChat kept calling me hubby and sending all kinds of collarbone revealing pictures. I just wanted to go back in time and beat myself up. She was a famous, beautiful CEO in Harbor City, and I didn't know if I should say I was lucky or unlucky to have hooked up with such a big shot online girlfriend. Just then, my main account received a message from Jade Lu. Hubby, I just met a junior of yours at your grandpa's house. What a coincidence. I didn't dare to reply. Another message came. Your wallpaper is my collarbone. He said. You sent it to him. How could you send my picture to someone else? I felt a chill down my spine. Was she planning to settle accounts with me right away? While I was still thinking, another message came. But you told him you were admiring a starlet. In your eyes, am I a starlet? Hearing this, I felt slightly relieved but still didn't know how to reply. While I was still hesitating, my backup account popped up a notification. Unsurprisingly, it was a message from Jade Lu. Can you contact your senior classmate now? I sent him a lot of messages on his main account, screenshot and send them back, but still can't reach him. She quickly messaged again. Could something have happened to him? He gave me his address before. Should I go look for him? Reading the messages, I couldn't sit still. How could I have forgotten this? My roommate had given her the apartment address before. If she really went there, wouldn't my identity be exposed? Once exposed, I didn't know where I would be exiled to, a week or blacklisted across the internet. I immediately switched to my main account and messaged back. Sorry, I'm on a business trip and haven't checked my phone. She immediately replied. Hubby, you finally replied. I thought something had happened to you. I almost went to your house to look for you. I breathed a sigh of relief. I'm not home. Let's talk when I get back. After sending the message, I put down my phone. That night, I went to find my buddy, but he was already drunk. Annoyed, I sat down next to him, poured myself a glass of wine, and drank it all in one go. My buddy looked at me in surprise. What's wrong, Leo? Not in a good mood. I thought about my purpose but didn't dare to tell the truth, so I avoided the topic. Keith, if you found out someone you cared about a lot was deceiving you, what would you do? My buddy asked back. Deceiving to what extent? Deceiving for money, looks, or love? I thought for a moment about the past between Jade Lu and me. She had bought me many small gifts, although I had refused them all. But she kept insisting, so maybe deceiving for money. And every night she called me hubby, so maybe deceiving for looks. Plus, my entire identity was fake. Wasn't that deceiving for love? My buddy saw my complicated expression and immediately guessed the problem. I bowed my head in frustration and admitted it. He immediately rolled his eyes. Deceiving for money, looks, and love. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't let it go. Don't even think about living peacefully. Sure enough, normal people wouldn't choose to forgive. If Jade Lu knew my real identity, knew I was deceiving her, I would definitely be blacklisted completely. Seeing my depressed look, he patted my shoulder and comforted me. Hey, just heartbroken over a girl? Not worth it. There are plenty of others out there. After returning home, I still couldn't stop thinking about what my buddy had said, and it further strengthened my previous thought. No one could forgive being deceived, and Jade Lu was definitely no exception. To protect my future life of wealth and prosperity, I absolutely couldn't let my identity be exposed. Just as I was thinking like this, my main WeChat account popped up with a few new messages. Unsurprisingly, it was Jade Lu again. She sent me a lot of voice messages, all calling me hubby in a spoiled tone, saying she missed and liked me very much. But that wasn't enough. She also sent me a bunch of collarbone-revealing pictures again. A honey trap. How could I resist this? But now, looking back at those pictures, I only felt they were more evidence against me. I wanted to ignore them, but I was afraid she would, like last time, directly come to find me. If so, my identity would be exposed and I wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, I had to reply. I calmed down, discarded my weak thoughts, and calmly typed a line. You didn't like being called hubby before, right? Or maybe don't force yourself in the future. She immediately replied, I'm not forcing myself. As long as hubby likes it, I'm happy. I replied, actually, I don't like it that much either. The other end was silent for a moment. When I thought she had understood and gotten my point, she unexpectedly sent a video, almost making my nose bleed. In the video, Jade Lu tucked her hair behind her ear, using her slender white hands to gently caress her collarbone, her small mouth softly calling, Hubby, do you really not like it? I like it to death, but I couldn't say that. I absolutely couldn't sink any deeper. At least I had to keep my distance and reduce the incriminating evidence. I firmly typed a line. Really don't like it that much. You should do more meaningful things. This time she was completely silent. I breathed a sigh of relief, turned off my phone, and lay down on the bed. But as soon as I closed my eyes, my head was full of the voice messages and pictures Jade Lu had just sent. I hated myself for being so spineless, easily seduced by beauty. Tossing and turning, I still couldn't sleep. Just then my phone rang again. Opening it, I saw a message from my backup account. She asked, "Is your senior classmate in a bad mood?" I replied, "Why do you ask?" Then she directly said that she was the senior classmate's girlfriend and asked me to find out how he was feeling. I used both accounts to message back and forth, then sent her some screenshots telling her that the senior classmate wasn't in a bad mood. "Ad mood just a bit busy." Finally she stopped asking. I just breathed a sigh of relief when my main account received a notification. A new message. She sent a picture of the outdoors. So just now she hadn't replied because she went outside. I was a little worried, also a little scared. Would she come looking for me? I sent a question mark. She replied in a mood, going out for a walk. Seeing her say that, a sour feeling welled up in my heart. I started blaming myself for not being a mature, composed 30-year-old. Reason told me that I couldn't continue to drag this on. Otherwise, I would definitely soften my heart. I seemed to see a vast desert waving at me. I had to grit my teeth and message, "You are too childish. I don't think we are suitable. Let's stop here. Actually, I like older women. Please don't look for me again. Hope you will grow up." After saying that, I didn't wait for her reaction and immediately blacklisted her. After blacklisting her, I returned to my normal life. Nothing special, just a mediocre college student every day. Only between the school cafeteria and my apartment. Sometimes, hearing a familiar voice, I would remember her. Seeing interesting things, I would also unconsciously want to share them with her, but then remembered we had broken up. I had blacklisted her. During this time, she also messaged my backup account asking me to help contact the senior classmate, but I used all kinds of excuses to refuse, not wanting to repeat my mistake. When I thought we would never have contact again, an unexpected thing happened. I was at Grandpa's house watching TV with him when suddenly Grandpa received a call. He hurriedly put on his clothes. I asked what happened, but he was so busy he didn't have time to explain, only urging me to change clothes too. I confusedly changed clothes and followed him out. It wasn't until we arrived at the place that I knew what had happened. It turned out Grandpa Lu had called Grandpa. Grandpa Lu and Jade Lu were going to the company when they had a car accident. Jade Lu was driving, but her uncle was traveling abroad with no relatives in the country. Grandpa Lu called my grandpa. Luckily, Grandpa Lu only had minor scratches. When I arrived, he was still happily competing and painting with my grandpa. At that time, Grandpa Lu looked at me with an embarrassed expression and then said, "Leo, my granddaughter is in the hospital room next door. No acquaintances to take care of her." He asked me to help move the fruit basket to his granddaughter. I really wanted to refuse, but seeing Grandpa Lu's hopeful expression, coupled with the image in my head of Jade Lu alone and lonely in the hospital room, I couldn't refuse. Perhaps noticing my softened attitude, Grandpa Lu continued to fan the flames. "That little Jade is really silly. She just broke up recently, so she's always absent-minded. Today, while driving, she was distracted by listening to something on the radio, and the car accident happened." Saying that, he looked at me with a hint of reproach. "Old and don't understand you young people's things, but you young people should be able to talk to each other." Hearing this, I felt even more guilty. It turned out he was blaming me for little Jade's accident. "Okay, I'll go," I told myself. Anyway, it's because of me that everything happened. I took the fruit basket, telling myself to strengthen my resolve, and then stepped into the hospital room next door. Jade Lu was sitting silently on the bed, looking at her phone. Although I couldn't clearly see the screen, I sensed she was looking at our chat history. I decided to have a serious talk with her, so I used the identity of a junior classmate to constantly persuade her. "He doesn't hate you, you are very good. He really thinks you are great." I bowed my head, took an orange and handed it to her. She looked at my hand for a while, then said, "This bracelet is beautiful." A chill ran down my spine. This bracelet was exactly the one I had shown her before because I thought it was beautiful and really liked it. I tried to appear natural and replied, Thank you, this is a gift from that senior classmate. I also think it's quite nice. Seeing that she had no other reaction, I breathed a sigh of relief. Luckily, I got through this time. Throughout that afternoon, I was uneasy because she kept asking me strange questions, making me always keep a high level of vigilance, afraid of saying or doing something wrong. Finally, I waited until dinner time. After returning home, just as I entered the door, I received a call from Grandpa Leo. Thank you so much today. That silly girl finally agreed to eat. She also said she liked having you by her side. I knew Grandpa Lou was starting to talk nonsense again. You know, only young people can talk to each other. Can I trouble you to help take care of her for another day tomorrow? He really wanted that too. Listening to his rambling, I knew I couldn't refuse. He had cut off all my escape routes, but I still felt confused. Why would he say such strange words wanting me to stay with Jade Lou? Could it be that he had discovered something? Afraid I would be exiled somewhere, just thinking about it made me anxious, unable to sleep the whole night. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital with dark circles under my eyes. She looked at me with a strange smile on her face. Didn't sleep well last night? Looking at her smile, I didn't know why, but I felt very flustered. That smile made me feel like prey being stared at. I tried to force a smile and replied, "No, I played games a bit late last night." She replied, "Not watching those starlets?" I almost spat out my water. The words starlets were my dark past, also one of my pieces of incriminating evidence. I quickly changed the subject. Grandpa Lou told me to cook for you, but I don't know what you like to eat. I just made something simple. But I made another mistake. I unconsciously made the dishes she had once said she liked. We looked at each other, then at the dishes on the table, eyes meeting eyes. She smiled ambiguously again, then said, "Thank you, I really like them." Realizing my carelessness the next day, I deliberately made dishes she didn't like. But when I brought them over, I realized it was still no good. Every dish was something she hated. Wasn't it too obvious? Trembling, I opened the lunchbox. She still smiled and said the same words as yesterday. "Thank you, Leo. You've worked hard. I really like them." My mouth twitched watching her eat the green vegetables she hated the most. The cups of water kept getting colder and colder. She must have discovered something, so she was deliberately pretending just to see me panic. In the end, would she deliver a fatal blow? Suddenly, there was a noise at the door. Jade Lou and I turned to look. It turned out it was Grandpa and Grandpa Lou coming. I hurriedly stood up, feeling anxious, but Grandpa Lou only smiled and said, "You two young people chat," and pulled Grandpa out. Turning back, Jade Lou's expression was very calm, seemingly unaffected. I worriedly said, "Do we need to explain to them?" "Explain what?" She laughed again, looking at me. Then said, "Explain we are nothing. What kind of relationship? We haven't done anything. Don't you think explaining would be like trying to cover up, making it even more obvious?" Suddenly, I felt her words made a lot of sense, so I obediently sat back down. But not explaining resulted in being bombarded with questions by Grandpa when I got home. "Leo, what's going on between you and the Lou family girl?" I sweated, replying, "We are nothing, Grandpa. Didn't you tell me to take care of Miss Lou? Cooking for her every day is also tiring. You know?" But Grandpa looked blank, asking, "When did I promise this? Men and women are different. What can you even take care of?" Grandpa was still mumbling, but in my heart, it was like a bomb had exploded. Could it be that Grandpa Lou really said that? Wasn't she really discovering something? A strong sense of unease surged up. I was swept away by my thoughts. Grandpa called me a few times before I came back to my senses. "Leo, you have to attend that party tonight. Can't let people lose face." I didn't hear clearly what he said, but I guessed it was a party. Although I didn't like parties, at least my friends would be there. Going wouldn't be too bad. That night I arrived on time. My friends were also present, but he opened his mouth and asked me a question that made me want to fall over. "What was that deception thing about the other day? What happened? Did someone deceive you?" I hurriedly covered his mouth, looking around. Luckily, no one noticed us. I pulled him to a corner of the party and sat down on a small sofa, whispering, "No one deceived me. Don't talk about this anymore." He stared at me with wide eyes. "Wasn't it that you deceived someone? You're too good, Leo," he suddenly said. I hadn't even covered his mouth when I reacted, intending to stop him, but a familiar voice echoed from behind. Deceive who? Leo deceiving others. The fur on my body immediately stood on end. He stiffly turned his head. Seeing a meaningful smile from Jade Lu, I hurriedly suppressed my fear, replying, "It's nothing, buddy, just kidding." Jade Lu smiled and nodded. I thought Leo, who's usually so capable, would be good at joking. I awkwardly pulled at my lips, asking, "Miss Lu, is there anything?" Jade Lu looked at me deeply, saying, "Leo, Grandpa is a good friend of my grandpa. Calling me Miss Lu feels too distant. Just call me Little Jade like Grandpa does." My buddy standing beside us looked at us curiously. I stiffly said the words, "Little Jade." Jade Lu nodded in satisfaction, then changed her expression to serious, saying, "Who knew? Ever since he left, I feel like everything is going wrong." I stumbled, asking, "Is he really that important to you?" She affirmed, nodding. "Yeah, without him here, everything feels lacking." She asked, "Tell me, if I look for him, would you want to come back to me?" I awkwardly replied, "I'm not too sure either. He must have his own thoughts." Jade Lu said again, "Can you help me contact him? I think he must have his own reasons." "I will accept anything." My eyes immediately contracted hearing her say that. I felt like she was implying something. Without much thought, I refused. "He once said he doesn't want me to interfere in your affairs anymore." Unexpectedly, she didn't persist, only nodding. "I see. Actually, asking you to pass on a message might not be very good." But just a second later, I felt uneasy again. She turned to look at my buddy, saying, "Because you guys are classmates, your friend might also know him. Could you ask your friend to help me contact him?" My buddy looked blank, and alarm bells rang wildly in my heart. Wasn't I supposed to have made up a senior classmate? I hadn't had time to inform my buddy how to lie yet. If Jade Lu said it now, everything would be exposed. She presumptuously took out her phone and opened my WeChat homepage. I was taken aback, my heart tightening. I knew if my buddy saw this, I wouldn't be able to escape this trouble. When she was about to hold out her phone, I hurriedly grabbed her hand, saying, "But I think, Little Jade, your sincere heart really can't be ignored." I said it so smoothly that I almost believed what I had just said myself. Jade Lu smiled in reply, then said, "Thank you, Leo, in advance," and happily walked away. After she left, my buddy immediately approached me, asking, "What was that just now? What's that senior classmate contacting thing? And why is that beautiful CEO calling you so intimately?" I knew I couldn't hide it anymore, so I told the whole story. My buddy's expression was very interesting, sometimes sinking, sometimes looking up. Finally, he sighed, "So it's you, Leo. What are you planning to do?" I immediately denied being truthful. I didn't want to become like that famous starlet. He sighed. He also understood Jade Lu's methods. If she really wanted to harm someone, we definitely couldn't deal with her. Luckily, my buddy had a close friend, Mr. Wong, who studied with us, graduated long ago, and was now starting his own business. He had opened a small company which really fit the image of a 30-year-old boss like me. My buddy heard our purpose and immediately refused. He said he was busy making money and didn't have time to play online dating games. In the end, we had to beg for days, even promising to intern at his company after graduation. Finally, he agreed to help me with this. On the appointed day, I and a few friends arrived at the restaurant we had booked. When Jade L saw us, her smiling expression suddenly froze. I looked at my buddy, and in each other's eyes, we reflected confusion. How could there be outsiders when the news of the beautiful CEO of Harbor City's online relationship was so big? We hurriedly stood up, understanding, and left, giving them private space. My buddy and I went to a cafe opposite, which had a perfect view to observe the situation across the restaurant. I hadn't eaten anything all morning. My stomach was a bit hungry, but looking at the scene before me, the sour feeling in my heart made me forget my hunger. The two of them seemed to be chatting quite well. I saw Jade L, after we left, still maintaining her charming smile, while Mr. Wong, from his initial polite distance, gradually became more sincere, his smile also growing wider and wider. I felt uncomfortable, no longer interested in observing them, only silently stirring the coffee in my hand. Suddenly, my buddy came close and whispered, "Leo, do you regret it?" I was surprised. Regret what? Actually seeing them chatting happily like this. A sour feeling also welled up in my heart. But wasn't it all my own doing? What I regretted was why I had rushed into that online relationship in the first place. Why create a fake image? Why dare to make so many unreasonable requests to Jade L? However, I had no right to regret it. If I did, I would have to face the consequences that I didn't dare to imagine. Moreover, it seemed like Jade L was also very satisfied with that Mr. Wong. After it ended, he came back and patted my shoulder. At that time, I came back to my senses, looking at Mr. Wong's bright smile, clearly very satisfied with Jade L. You broke up with the Liu family girl. Do you know how many resources she has? I shook my head in my heart. Jade L wasn't the high and mighty Harbor City CEO, but the cute girl on the phone who often called me hubby and sent collarbone pictures. My buddy patted my shoulder. Hey, don't break up anymore. Let me help you persuade her. My buddy and I looked at each other. Mr. Wong continued. Such good resources, I can't bear to give them up. If you really want to break up, just hand her over to me. I'll take care of her for you. My buddy started recounting the details of his date with her, but I was still thinking about what he had just said. The 30-year-old man that Jade L liked had really appeared in front of her, and I didn't need to go to Africa anymore. Everything seemed to have reached a balance. This was my choice, right? What else did I have to worry about? Okay, hand her over to you then. My buddy looked at me with a complicated expression. Mr. Wong. I laughed happily, but just as I was about to raise my head, I unexpectedly heard Jade's voice. Haven't left yet? I froze, not daring to turn around. Jade's voice echoed from behind. Are you planning to hand me over to someone, hubby? I stood like stone, petrified. The coffee cup in my hand suddenly felt like a cactus. The light in the cafe turned into scorching sunlight. Around me there was only the smell of desert dust. My buddy hurriedly pulled Mr. Wong away, leaving me and Jade standing there. I still didn't dare to turn my head. She chuckled softly and then said, Let's go. What I wanted to do was run away, but I didn't dare. I only knew to bow my head obediently and follow behind her as she led me into another restaurant. She had booked a private room. I looked around, not daring to raise my head to look at her. She skillfully ordered a table full of dishes I liked to eat. She asked if I missed home. I shook my head, saying I wasn't hungry, but immediately after my stomach betrayed me, rumbling loudly. I felt really embarrassed, as if the shame spread to every cell in my body. Why was my stomach so weak, and why did it have to embarrass me at this moment? She laughed again. I didn't know if it was my illusion, but I felt there was something menacing in that laughter. Aren't you tired of acting? She asked, then continued. How long are you planning to keep this up? I told myself in my heart to create a psychological battle for myself. Even if I had to face the desert, I couldn't let myself weaken. I didn't dare to speak out loud, only wanting to slap myself in the face. I hated myself for being so unconfident. Are you afraid of something? Afraid I'll eat you. I wasn't afraid she would eat me. I was just afraid she would take revenge on me. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Luckily, at that moment, the waiter came in bringing the food. Let's eat first, we'll talk after eating, she said. Oh dear, is this the last meal before execution? We sat eating strangely and silently. After the waiter cleared the table, my heart tightened again. The tension reached my throat. Her long fingers gently tapped on the table, each tap like hitting my heart. She suddenly asked, Aren't you planning to explain anything to me? I jumped up, bowing 90 degrees, sincerely saying, Sorry. I didn't intentionally deceive you. I didn't know that person was you. I also didn't intentionally create a 30-year-old persona. I was afraid if I said I was a college student, people wouldn't pay attention to me. My words were jumbled. The more I spoke, the more confused I became. My tone was very rushed. She seemed quite surprised by my reaction. She stood up and walked closer to me. I took a deep breath, thinking I would be slapped, but she only looked at me. Do I look that scary? I raised my head to look at her. Actually, I didn't find her scary. Although I had secretly looked at her many times, now looking closely, I had to admit she was really beautiful. Really very beautiful, completely meeting all my standards. She called me hubby, and she even had collarbones. I hurriedly pulled back my wandering thoughts, softly asking, You're not going to take revenge on me, are you? She looked at me in surprise. Take revenge on you? For what? I whispered. Throw me into the desert. Before you said you liked women, so why? I mumbled about the rumors about her. She laughed, looking at me. I'm just keeping myself clean and pure, so I don't often spread rumors about my sexual orientation. I didn't say anything about that starlet you mentioned. It's true I threw him into the desert, but it wasn't just because of spiking drinks. He was someone sent by a company to steal trade secrets. People like that can't be left around. I was stunned. Then why do you like me? She blushed slightly. Actually, I don't have much romantic experience. I just feel I like you. I was dumbfounded. The famous, beautiful CEO of Harbor City was actually an innocent girl. Aren't you angry that I deceived you? She smiled lightly. Actually, I recognized you from the beginning. Your grandpa has shown me your WeChat many times. My grandpa showed you my WeChat? Jade Lu looked at me intently. Her eyes seemed to contain the entire starry sky. Grandpa said you are the person he chose to be his grandson-in-law. I was puzzled, my head unable to process this information. So there was no story of hanging a goat's head or online dating like I had imagined. Jade Lu had known who I was from the beginning and had cooperated with me in this play, listening to me brag about my 30-year-old domineering CEO persona. I still couldn't believe it. Then why did you call me hubby? She stared at me, her eyes full of emotion. I don't know what to do. I just do what you like because you like it. I am willing to do everything. The unexpected confession made me a little flustered. Just now, the image of Jade Lu having dinner with Mr. Wong flashed in my head. I couldn't help but ask. But just now, you were chatting happily with Mr. Wong and others. I thought you really liked that 30-year-old CEO. She patiently explained. We were talking about work. Everyone was friends. I invited them. If I showed displeasure, it would seem a bit impolite. She worriedly looked at me as if afraid I would be angry. I didn't say anything. She asked again. Then can you give me an answer? I was in a daze, not understanding what she was talking about. She became serious. Whether you are a 30-year-old CEO or just a college student, what I like is you as a person. I don't care about your position. So can you give me a chance for us to be openly in love? At this moment my mind was blank, unable to think. She was really very beautiful when serious, making me not know what to do. After the confession, I felt guilty towards my best friend, so I decided to buy a lot of gifts to give them and directly went to their houses to apologize. I didn't expect that my friends wouldn't care at all, only waving their hands, indicating that they didn't care who I was in love with. They just wanted some benefits. Benefits from your relationship. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. It was true that I had gained another good friend, or rather a few. However, my friends didn't let us off the hook. In addition to previously agreeing that I had to intern at their company after graduation, they also demanded that I help them get a few more projects from Jade Lu before they would agree. I had to admit that it was indeed the thinking of a big boss, calculating in business, not something we college students could compare to. After settling everything with my friends, I still had to face Grandpa. Although I had promised him long ago that if I were in love, I would inform him first. When he heard the news, he didn't show any surprise. He even muttered, "Lost again, let old man Lu win this round." So it turned out that Grandpa and my friends all knew that Jade Lu and I were dating, only I was unaware. Still acting in front of Grandpa, I was both angry and felt stupid. But now, looking at Jade sitting coldly, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and participating in a video conference with company employees, I couldn't help but admit that her face was really very captivating. I smiled mischievously. She noticed my gaze but only glanced over, then turned back to her serious work participating in the conference. However, her ears were slightly red, unable to hide her true feelings. The feeling of her being serious in front of others but shy behind my back made me unable to restrain myself. I suddenly thought maybe it wasn't bad if everything continued like this. After the conference, she gently took off her glasses. I went over, sat on her lap, and used my index finger to lift her chin. Like before, I said, "Call me hubby." Then I heard the voice I love the most. "Hubby, I love you so much."